Okay, so previously in our video of what Sharia law is, we sort of discussed what these sources of Sharia are. Now we're just going to have a quick refresher. So before we established that Sharia consists of two sources. Now the primary source we said, which is the Quran and Sunnah, are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is the revelation sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is of course the Quran, which is the unspoken or uncreated speech of God, and then the Sunnah, which is the actions and practices of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the second source that we discussed, or the secondary sources, were these called the Qiyas and the Ijma. Now again, as we established before, the Qiyas and Ijma are the human efforts to understand what these primary sources entail. And again, we said that the Qiyas is the consensus of the rulings from the scholars of Islam, and the Ijma are practices that have already been done in the previous cases of law and the precedents. And again, these four sources are what create this word fiqh. And again, the fiqh is the culmination of all of these four factors, and it's also the concrete applicable rule from which these four factors derive. So now the next thing that we're going to discuss is what is the conventional law of Canada and how it relates to the Sharia law. So the conventional law of Canada actually focuses on two areas. Now the first is the domestic law. You see, the domestic law is any law, so it's any law which is in accordance to any act in Canada. And now this can be anywhere from crimes such as theft, property crimes, murder, and any other petty crimes that will constitute any sort of violation or any sort of danger in Canadian society. Now the next thing that we need to know for domestic law is that its jurisdiction works on an individual versus individual or individual versus society basis. Now the next law that Canada sort of entails and holds very in high regards is the international law. Now the international law is set, and it's a part and parcel of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. And Canada's sort of efforts to understand that is the Canadian Charter of Human Rights. And now these laws primarily focus on the fundamental laws that every single right or every single law that any Canadian is entailed to. And now these can go anywhere from the right to life, so right to life, right to speech, and much more. And again, now this international law primarily focuses on a individual versus government. So again, the domestic law, its jurisdiction focuses on individual versus individual, or individual versus the society. And international law focuses on individual versus the government. It's a violation of individual versus government. Now let's take a look at Sharia. Sharia law. So previously we just said that for conventional Canadian law, the violations are in domestic laws an individual versus individual or society, and in international law, it's the individual versus the government. You see, Sharia is not that different. Its two jurisdictions or two sort of branches is the Haquuq Allah, which is the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over his creation, and then the Haquuq al-Ibad, which is the rights of the creation. And this entails humans versus humans or any other organic thing in the world. So this can be anywhere from trees to animals and much more. So inshallah ta'ala, in our next video, we're going to discuss this next topic of hudud and how it relates to Sharia. For now, this has been Project IUoC. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.